Chapter 15. Cremia's visitors. Night watch. Questions asked and answered. The fairy bobbed up and down, luminescent in the afternoon light, fluttering around the farmhouse's kitchen. Sitting in one of the handmade wooden chairs at the kitchen table, her feet not touching the ground, was a wispy girl, by appearances no more than 10 years old. Her hair and clothing were mottled green, almost indistinguishable from plant matter, and her round face was speckled with dirt. She looked woefully out of place in the neatly arranged kitchen. Cremia sat down across from her, setting down a simple farmhand's lunch as she did so.
"Would you like me to get you something, Saria?"
The girl shook her head.
"No thank you, Cremia. The fairy folk are sustained by the forest." "Just being polite. So what brings you out of said forest, anyhow?"
Saria's fairy finally tired of flitting about and settled onto the girl's shoulder. Cremia knew that, although Saria seemed to be a child, the forest sprite was likely several times her own age.
"There have been odd goings-on within the city. Something has changed. The balance that has existed there for eons has tipped. In which direction, I cannot say."
Cremia spared a glance towards one of the windows. Through the glass she could see her own fields, where her sister Romani was practicing her archery. Beyond that, the grey edifice of the city dominated the horizon, towering even over the distant mountains.
"Still, why do you care? It's not like the forest people to pay attention to." "Well, anything outside of the forest, really." "I don't know,"
Saria said.
"The Great Fairy wishes me to tell you this. She says that the reason for doing so will become apparent in time." "In time?"
Cremia repeated.
"What does that mean?"
Saria turned to look out the window as well.
"I think you are about to find out."
Cremia followed her gaze. There, strolling across the fields towards the farmhouse, were 3 people. They were still quite a distance away, and she could only make out their silhouettes: a lean, athletic man, an abnormally tall woman with red hair that shone even at this distance, and an unmistakable, hulking figure that had poorly attempted to disguise himself with a set of traveling clothes. She stood from her meal and walked across the room, stepping out the side door.
"Romani!"
she called. Romani turned, bow falling to her side.
"Inside."
The girl obeyed wordlessly, hurrying over to her big sister. As she went inside the farmhouse, she passed Saria on her way out.
"Hello Saria,"
Romani said cheerfully. The forest sprite, who had been rather wooden throughout her conversation with Cremia, responded in kind.
"Hi there, Romani,"
Saria said with a bright smile that was reserved only for children. Cremia knew, having seen that smile many times when she had been a little girl. When Romani had gone, Saria returned her attention to Cremia.
"The Great Fairy and the Great Decutri have given them permission to travel in their forest. They wish you to convey the message." "I'll see what I can do,"
Cremia said wryly, watching the tall woman's sour reaction upon stepping in a particularly fresh patch of fertilizer.
"This sucks,"
Midna grumbled, scraping her shoe against a fence post.
"Nature sucks. Walking sucks. I wish I could fly again." "Why don't you?"
Link asked.
"You never really explained to me why you look like that all of a sudden."
Midna stopped herself mid-scrape and gave him a blank stare.
Well, no harm in telling you, I guess. So tell." "As a member of the Twilight people, I was an adept shadow mage. Good enough to realize that I wasn't good enough. Does that make sense?" "Yes, it does. The darkness beneath Hyrule runs deep, and it is no ordinary darkness. There is a power there, something beyond what I can imagine, but I still chose to dabble in it. I was able to harness the true nature of the shadow, but at a cost." "How do you mean?"
She shook her leg in a forlorn way, and then glared at one of Cremia's cows, as if she was certain it was the one who had made the mess she had stepped in.
"The power was too much. Way too much. The only way for me to contain it without being torn apart was to make it a part of myself. To fuse it to my very being. You see where I'm going with this?"
He nodded, but motioned for her to continue.
The magic's corrupting influence changes my physical form. This is actually what I really look like, Link. Zelda stripped me of my fused shadows that night in her throne room. I am normally a very capable mage, but with that magic augmenting my power.
She gave a menacing little laugh.
I will light you up. And that doesn't scare you?
Midna leaned back against the fence.
I don't follow. To put yourself under the influence of something so powerful. To depend on it. Aren't you afraid that it will consume you? I wish, she said. I saw my people die because I was not strong enough. The other day, the fight between Zant and Vati and Ganondorf and we had to run because the magic I had wasn't strong enough. Colin died, and I couldn't do anything about it. I need to be more powerful, I need to control my own fate. I am sick of my destiny being decided by people more powerful than I am.
Link said nothing. He clenched his fist and once again felt the intoxication of the Triforce's power flowing through him.
Good news!
Ganondorf shouted, as he stepped out of the farmhouse and walked across the field towards them.
I made a deal with Cremia. She'll let us buy 3 of her horses, and we can stay the night at her ranch. If you like, she can make dinner for us, too. What do you mean, if we like?
Midna asked. Ganondorf gave her a friendly punch in the shoulder, still enough to almost knock her over.
There's a lot of work to be done on a ranch. If you don't work, you don't eat.
She turned to Link.
Hey buddy! What are the odds I can talk you into doing my share of work for me? Very low,
Link said. The sky at night seemed bigger, somehow, without the towering walls of the city obscuring parts of it. The spread of stars across the inky darkness was captivating, and Link found himself staring upwards in admiration before he remembered that Midna was not a patient woman. His footsteps were quiet against the wet grass, and he moved noiselessly in the night's stillness. Scanning the darkened fields, he quickly spotted the sputtering light of the campfire, and he set out towards it, 2 steaming mugs in his hands. There was nobody at the fire. Cautiously alarmed, Link set the drinks down and moved his hand to the hilt of his hunting knife. He wished for a sword.
Midna,
he whispered.
What are those drinks?
Said a voice behind him. He turned and drew the knife. Midna stepped out of the darkness and into the firelight.
Easy, she said. I heard someone coming, and I didn't want to be seen. It's just me,
Link said.
It's my turn for watch duty. You're done yours. Well, I know that now.
She bent and picked up one of the mugs.
So what are the drinks? Hot chocolate,
he said, taking a seat on a nearby log.
Cremia told me how to make it. It's good.
Midna took a sip.
Any liquor in it? No. It's just chocolate and warm milk. Oh.
She looked disappointed.
Gods damn it, my back is killing me. Physical labor ought to be reserved for you idiots.
She sat down next to him. Cremia had kept the 3 of them working all day with work she had been putting off. Midna had painted the farmhouse, while Ganondorf and Link had redug a trench through one of her fields, to keep it from flooding when it rained.
Do you know where Ganondorf is taking us?
She asked him suddenly.
No,
Link said.
He only said that he knows someone and we need their help. Oh,
she said, again.
I just thought he might have told you. Ganondorf keeps to himself way too much, but it seems like he tells you things for some reason.
They sat there, in Cremia's field, the smell of the forest and the well-fertilized soil all around them. Midna leaned in closer to the fire.
Can I ask you something else?
He nodded.
She
stopped.
Midna? What is it?
She stuck her arm out, and reached towards the fire. Before her hand touched the flames, she drew it back, stung.
I felt that. It hurt.
She stood, her feet were bare, and they shuffled against the grass.
The ground, the breeze, the cool air. I feel it all. It's so different. I couldn't feel those things before. I thought I did, but I didn't, not really.
Hesitantly, she reached out again, towards him. Her hands brushed against his hair, the skin of his face, the cloth of his hood.
I forgot what it was like. I like it. Maybe losing the shadow magic was good for you.
She withdrew her hand. Clenched it. A tiny flame blossomed and flickered there.
But the fused shadows, Link. They felt good, too. That power, contained within me. The feeling of it, rushing through my hands. The darkness, against my skin. I could feel the darkness, and it felt good. You don't have to go back, Midna, he said. To the way you were.
The fire in her palm went out.
But I need that power. Zant is a madman, like Body, like Zelda. We have to stop them. But I don't know if I can do it unless I have that strength again. I have to be better, stronger. You have me,
Link pointed out,
and Ganondorf. The Garuto. You don't have to do it alone.
She turned, and a hint of the old fire in her eyes returned.
You don't understand.
Midna snapped.
I can't put my life in someone else's hands. I want to control my own fate, carve my own path. I want to be more than a piece in the game Ganondorf is playing. So you want me to tell you what to do, Midna? If you're so intent on choosing your own path, then why are you asking me for advice?
She looked away.
Just tell me this. In my place? What would you do?
He didn't hesitate in answering.
I would do whatever is necessary to keep more innocent people from dying. To protect the people of Hyrule. If it means the deaths of Zant, or Vadi, or Zelda, then so be it. If it means my own, then still, I would do it.
She smiled. Midna's natural form had a captivating smile, it had a gentle warmth to it that could not have been more different from the menacing sharpness of her impish grin.
I knew you would say that. Then why did you ask? Because it amuses me to see you acting like a big damn hero all the time. One more question. Ask.
She finished her hot chocolate and stretched.
If I had the chance to draw upon the shadow once more, to go back to the way I was, would you want me to?
This time it took Link a moment to think of his answer.
I honestly can't say. It's your decision to make, and I would want you to make it. But I can tell you that you will always be the same Midna to me, no matter what you look like.
She turned away from him, but he could tell she was smiling again.
Well, my watch is done. I'll see you tomorrow, Link. Good night, Midna.
She left him alone in the starry darkness of the night. Looking across the plains, he found that he could still see the city, albeit only in silhouette. The velvet blue of the sky was replaced by stolid blackness, and the gilded silver of the stars was replaced by 1,000 more pinpricks of fiery gold. Link drew his hunting knife and tossed it from hand to hand. He felt the weight of it, made a few experimental stabbing motions, and then sheathed it, longing for the familiar weight of a sword at his side. He continued to feed the fire with the wood that had been left for him, but within a few hours he had run out. He decided to look for firewood at the edge of the forest and was rewarded with several promising-looking branches he found lying around. He dumped an armful of branches at the fireside and tossed a few on top to keep it going before going to look for more. There was plenty, and he had soon made 3 trips back and forth. When he returned with a 4th bundle, however, he stopped. There was someone sitting with their back to him, warming themselves by the flames. Had Midna been unable to sleep after all? An odd sense of déjà vu came over him as he cautiously approached. It was only when he noticed the enormous pack and odd motions of the visitor that he realized who it was. He drew his knife and lay the cold steel of it against the masked salesman's throat.
Explain. Now.
His grin was as unchanging as ever.
We meet for the 3rd time, hero. 3 is a powerful number, but perhaps true power comes when the pattern of 3 is broken.
Link did not remove his knife.
I saw you before, in the forest, and again, in the city. Are you following me? What do you want?
Unfazed, the man merely smiled.
Have you considered the questions I have asked you? Perhaps those are the answers you really need.
Realizing the futility of his threats, Link finally removed the blade.
You talk like we know each other, but I've only ever met you 3 times. 3 times 3, hero. What is wisdom? What is power? What is courage? They are 3 words that I am very interested in. For one thing,
Link said.
Tell me who you are.
Although the grin never left the mask salesman's face, he bowed to Link.
It is forbidden. Forbidden? By who? By you, O courageous one.
That did not help Link at all.
Look. If you're following me just to be confusing, you've already accomplished that. You can leave. Fine. But first, a gift.
He turned and shuffled through his enormous backpack briefly, and withdrew a compass made of gold.
What are these things you're giving to me? They don't make any sense.
But still, Link reached out and took the compass. He felt a strange connection to it, somehow, just like the other items he had left behind in Hyrule. The needle on the compass was pointing straight at the city. He spun the device around, but still it always settled in that same direction.
What is it pointing at?
He asked. There was the echoing sound of laughter. He looked up, and the mask salesman had gone. He examined the golden compass some more before pocketing it. At the very least, it would show him the way back to Hyrule, so he supposed it had more use than the bizarre mask he had been given before. The night passed uneventfully after that. During his watch, the heavy silence only broken by the wind blowing through the trees and the creaking of the old forest. The moon had long passed its zenith in the sky and was nearing the horizon once more when Ganondorf came out to take his shift.
We leave with the dawn,
he said, sitting across from Link.
Crimea has horses we can take, and we have permission to travel through the forest. Permission?
Link asked. He listened to the trees swaying in the wind once more.
The forest is old, Link, older than Hyrule City itself. And the guardian of the forest is something far greater than you or I.
He looked guiltily at the branches he had scavenged for the fire, hoping that whatever guardian Ganondorf was talking about would forgive him.
So,
he said casually,
is there any particular reason you haven't told us just where we're headed yet? There is indeed. Just remember,
Link warned.
I'm following you and Midna now, because I trust you. Give me any reason to doubt you, and I just might be gone.
Ganondorf smiled. The Gerudo leader's smiles very rarely had any humor in them, and this was no exception.
Midna might just leave with you, Link. She has taken quite a shining to you, you know. That girl has a lot of trouble making friends, as you may have guessed.
Link laughed.
I never would have thought it. All the more reason to keep you in the loop.
Ganondorf picked up one of the extra branches and prodded the fire with it.
The 3 of us need to stick together. I highly doubt that Zelda will allow us to travel to Snow Peak unmolested. Snow Peak?
North of the city was a vast mountain range, with one particular summit rising above all the others.
What are we going to find there? A god.
Ganondorf remained focused on the flames, not meeting Link's eyes.
One of the lesser pantheon, but powerful nonetheless. But it is not power that we are after. What is it? Knowledge. An oracle lives atop the mountain. And when you say a god, what do you?
Ganondorf gave a signal for Link to be silent, and stared for a long time into the darkness of the forest. When he was satisfied they were not overheard, he continued.
Servants of the creators. Caretakers of this realm. The world is full of gods, Link, gods who care little for the struggles of you and I, but sometimes they can be persuaded. If a certain person comes along, it is not uncommon for the gods to grant them a boon.
He couldn't help his gaze flicking down to the Triforce on the back of his hand.
After all, you and I do have some influence among the gods, don't we?
Link said.
Precisely. And that is why we must be very careful. The lands outside of Hyrule are, in many ways, more dangerous than the city itself. We have to stay together in the forest. Bad things happen to people who lose themselves in the trees. Well, why go through the forest, then, if it is so dangerous?
Ganondorf was again looking over Link's shoulder, at the dark trees, as he spoke.
Because between Zelda and an angry forest guardian, I would much rather chance it with the god.
Chapter end.